Joel, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going
How
fantastic. What about you?
how are we feeling about World War III coming?
Oh, well, I mean, it's first time for everyone, right? I mean,
First,
it's
yeah,
it's kind of funny because I'm a relentless optimist in life, and I think that our generations have been fortunate to live through very few bad things compared to everything in the past. And like when I look in the past about how the stuff used to go, like the actual world wars were very bad and really turned the world upside down. And then there was communism and the whole Cold War. And since then, things haven't been that perfect, right? But they're like, for example, things like the War on Terror, as it was called, affected some certain people and regions very badly, but the rest of the world did not affect that well. And like as someone in a first world country, I feel like my life has been getting exponentially better. Like even now, people are saying, "Oh, we're in an economic crisis," and true. However, uh, the last economic crisis, I remember I had a really tough time finding work, and now there's just jobs everywhere, and so I'm always looking at the positives. But
I feel like
I
not a
don't.
day goes by without a recruiter hitting me up for some gig I'm not interested on. So like
Yeah, of
you're
course.
spot on. Like it's not like people
Yeah.
are losing their jobs left and right.
I mean, people are losing their jobs, but they're not. They're not without the opportunity to get a job. It's just, what's funny is this is amplified in my safe little spot of the world of New Hampshire right here because um, the minimum wage, there's no minimum wage law in New Hampshire. So the federal US minimum wage applies of like $7 an hour or something. But McDonald's is starting people off like to start out it's like $15 to $18 an hour to work at McDonald's, and which is supposed to be like the bottom, of the employment
Yeah,
rung. And then I saw people landscaping advertisements saying like if you want to do landscaping, we pay 40 to 45 per hour. And I'm like, man. And then the other day, I saw people landscaping outside of my building, and they were all young kids. And I don't know if you look at like how young people are, like I think they were in high school, like teenagers, because like they're
at
still
that
skinny.
young because yeah, I
Their
like to
arms are
consider myself young.
yeah, but like they're like full size. They're like as tall as me, but you could tell because they haven't filled out. They're still like in high school, and I'm like, man, those people are making $45 an hour. Like, wow, and just like
All wiry.
landscaping. Like they're the jobs are out there, people.
Man, 40 to 45, like I wish I had those opportunities back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was like that, man. But I've been like thinking of this World War III scenario, and it
Hmm.
does look like the one thing no one ever wants to do, obviously, like is to crash the economies, right?
Hmm.
Which doesn't seem to be what Putin wants, because theirs have already like plunged. What was the figure? 45% already just over the last month. So I just get thinking, man, is this gonna get everywhere? What are your thoughts on that?
Hmm. I so I think at some point there is going to be a global struggle for power that involves military action at some point, and I do not think this is it personally. Now, I have to say, big disclaimer: I have not been paying close attention to this situation, so I could be completely wrong. I just remember back in what was it, 2008 or so, the Georgian crisis with South Ossetia and
Hmm.
Russia bombing there, and of like people were like, "Oh no, this is it! Oh my gosh!" Like, and it was it was bad for people where it happened, but it seems to be very similar in terms of well, you have this like this country they're talking about breakaway regions or whatever. And Russia just saying, "Oh, we just want to like do a little bit of military action, and that's it. We're not trying to conquer it." And now, if it starts to become a situation where you have a large empire, you know, conquering countries and saying they're part of us now again and starting on another one, then it starts to become a little, I don't know, then that might be a little bit more concerning. But I just don't think, I don't know if like I don't know if any global superpower really has the means and the will right now to start acquiring new territories and starting a nuclear war or anything. Like it doesn't seem like I don't think the will is there right now. Maybe I'm just an optimist though.
Well, he does, and I'm referring to Putin exclusively. I know this is not a politics
Hmm.
show, so I swear
Yes,
to
of
people that
course.
are listening that we're taking this into crypto pretty soon. But like, the reason I'm referring to Putin exclusively is because it doesn't seem to be like a state that has like a strong bureaucracy or
Hmm.
apparatus behind this whole thing, right? It really looks like the will of a single person, and
Hmm.
his messaging seems to be something along the lines of, do we'll do anything it takes, and we have assessed the consequences of our actions, and we're ready to pull through it. So it does seems to me like he's playing chicken with the whole world at this stage.
Yeah, and I think he's a very smart man, and I think he realizes that he can take. I think he's less scared of the risks than other people are. Doesn't mean he doesn't see that they exist. I'm pretty sure he just sees. It's kind of like the allegory in like let's just say fighting and martial arts or whatever. Um, which Putin does, right? He's a martial artist, and he's is when you experience violence and experience things like that, the consequences much greater. Which is why a lot of people who do train, for example, are not violent people because they know what can happen, and that makes them inherently peaceful in the rest of their life. But also, they know the details of where that line is a lot sooner. They're less scared for a military conflict because they know that not every military
Mm.
conflict is like World War III, and so he's much more comfortable in that zone of, well, maybe people will shoot some missiles. I don't know. Like he's much more comfortable, and so he who cares least he wins. So I feel like he's stepping in there because he knows that he can get away with it, and other people will not be able to do or not will not be willing to step into that zone. It's just that after you're out of that zone, on the other side, no one wants to be.
Right. Uh, and it was funny. I found like this funny video. Then
Hmm.
obviously I found it funny, but like this person in Twitter was pretty outraged that there had like a there
Hmm.
had been like this lobby meeting between like the mega rich of Russia and the government, and Putin was there. And the thing was like they were
Hmm.
discussing crypto regulation, um, which like this person was outraged about, because like, why are you talking about such a nimble topic when you're obviously got more important things to talk about right now? And like they're they handle themselves kind of like that. They like to put out a certain image to the world. um, I found it funny
Hmm.
though, because like when you see like the biggest leverage NATO is trying to pull on Russia right now is to kick them out of the SWIFT system,
Hmm.
you would as a crypto head immediately go towards, oh, this could be good for crypto.
Yeah, so especially if you're like a Bitcoin maximalist, you use every news headline to pump it. But that is, I guess, a good place to go. Um, I think that these kinds of headlines have always existed, but we just recognize them more now that we pay attention to the financial system, and there's more people that know what Swift is. Like I don't think a lot of average people knew what Swift even was. They just knew, oh, I have bank transfers. That's
Yeah.
it. They didn't even know what Swift was until crypto came along, and then they start being like, well, it's like, well, what is Ripple? Well, it's like think of a better Swift system or whatever. Like, what's Swift? And then like that kind of stuff. And so um, it's an interesting thing where I think that crypto regulation in the West is going to be, I would say it's going to be, that's the real conflict, right? Is how does the West deal with crypto regulation? Because the West, I have to say, it seems like the Western world, the like the US and Canada and Western Europe seems to be where all the crypto action is at, as far as like the money involved and a lot of the development and stuff, and a lot of the investment. And ironically, it's elsewhere where the actual usefulness of crypto is strongest, right? Like you
Right.
think places like Latin America, places like Russia now with the SWIFT system and stuff. So it's going to be very inconvenient. It's very inconvenient for the Western powers now to try to financially censor the way they've always done it, right? Their enemies, and if they can't because of this technology, then if they crush this technology or try, well, first off, they can't really crush the technology. They can just, make it harder to use for a lot of people. But if they come down on it, they're destroying a lot of investment of a lot of very smart and connected people, including, US senators and stuff like that. There's a lot of people in the US who have a lot of money in crypto, including high up people. And so it's a very interesting situation. I honestly think actually, I honestly don't know what to think how this is going to happen. I think what's going to happen is crypto is going to be regulated at the minimum level as a result of this. As in, it will be regulated, but at the very least, and the governments around the world will likely be kind of like not know what to do. It's like your house is on fire. It's like, well, do I run down the stairs and risk getting hit by the blaze to get out? Or do I jump out the window and risk breaking my leg on the way
Right.
out? And you're just sitting there and you just don't know what to do until your house burns down. Now you have no choice. You die in the fire. I think that's kind of the way a lot of the, sorry for the bad image
Yeah,
there, but
just
I think
picturing
that's
this is
kind of what a
horrible.
lot of these that's the what a lot of Western governments I think are doing. They're just like, oh, I don't know, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do this? Do I do that? Neither situation is good, and they're going to just be sort of paralyzed while the crypto world takes off around them. That's maybe an optimistic prediction, but that's my prediction at least.
I'm thinking like, okay, I don't think they're gonna immediately go to blockchain, right? They must be prepared in somehow because I mean that's like sort of like their message, right? We're prepared for whatever you can yield at us. Um,
Hmm.
Now, why do you want your economy to be at 50% its value and own Ukraine? I wouldn't know the answer to that. I'm no expert. But like that doesn't seem like. Of course, they're going to be rolling a CBDC at some point. Like that's the kind of thing you would expect
Hmm.
from them, right? But going directly to crypto, it's not where I think it is in their mind. Like in
Hmm.
the end, they're going to still have an impoverished economy. So it's interesting, definitely. Where are we right now at the speaking about financial censorship? Where are we right now at the whole situation with the Canadian truckers? Have they started using crypto?
As far as yes, so it's difficult, of course, because the ability to actually use crypto in daily transactions for most people is very
Yeah,
limited. But obvious. So first off, the GoFundMe got shut down, and then the Canadian government actually was going to like take everyone's money. And then there was enough of a outcry they just decided to refund it. And
did they?
then
I
there
missed
was
that
a
part.
competitor. I think they just I don't I think they decided to refund it, like give everyone their money back, but with like a 17-day hold on the money. Like, so anyone who gave it you basically they're freezing your money for a
Okay,
while. And then there was a Give Then Go that came out, the competitor. I don't know exactly where that ended up, but they got hacked and all their donor information got leaked. And there's actually been journalists who have gotten a hold of that information, like left wing propagandist journalists, of course, who have been calling people who have donated to this, say, "Hey, we saw your name on the link. Do you want a statement for us or whatever?" It's become really weird and ugly. And then crypto started, and then first of all, uh, the I believe the Canadian government has acquired the legal power, right, to block or censor everything, including crypto transactions. Of course, legal and real power are very different
right.
things. Uh, but I believe they are limiting the ability of financial institutions, including crypto banks like the Coinbases of the world, to interact with funds that come from that. And of course, everyone's tracking everything. I believe even that the Canadian authorities have actually contacted Coinbase and Kraken about this and just, you know, scolded them and stuff. And so, which I don't think they have disagree. They don't think they have jurisdiction over that, over those companies because they're US based companies. But it's starting to heat up to where now people are seeking ways of um, not using centralized custodial systems, you know?
Okay, so that just gets you thinking about the fiat ramps, right? Like how do you turn this
Hmm.
into actually spendable money without like having to transform everything to accept crypto overnight? You said that your
Hmm.
situation when we were chatting off the mics before
Hmm.
recording this, you said that your situation had changed a bit. For those that not know, Joel, he's been living off crypto for 5 6 years
Something like that.
completely.
Let's go with 6, I guess.
Just so you say now you're able to make more payments. So what are you doing there now?
So there was an improvement to this app called Dash Direct that was released recently. And previously, so this app basically worked as a gift card backend that what you could do is you could buy gift credit to specific stores with Dash instantly. And but now the user, which is like, oh, okay, well, people are doing that forever. Okay, but the way this actually works, um, it works seamlessly to where literally you walk into a store, like let's just say is a Chipotle burrito place, and they say, oh, your burrito is 15.95, and so you type in 15.95, hit buy, it opens your Dash wallet, you buy it, and then you get a barcode for exactly 15.95 in Chipotle credit that then they scan and then you pay. And so the way it works practically is you can just only have crypto, in this case Dash, right? And just run around and spend it a whole lot of places, sometimes with significant discounts like 8% or 5 to 8%, for example. And it works seamlessly and you don't have to, okay, well, I'm going to Chipotle today for lunch. I don't know how much it's going to be, but I'm going to just keep $20 in credit just in case. Like, no, you don't have to do that. You just, when they tell you how much, you can do that. Now, the upgrade that it got recently is uh, now they have a virtual Mastercard in the app, which lets you do the same thing but buy credit on a Mastercard, a virtual Mastercard, and then pay anywhere. So
Okay.
now it went from like 158,000 merchants worldwide to or to literally every merchant in the US right now you can spend Dash at. Like everyone. And so the big kicker is crypto. There have been crypto debit cards and stuff like that around for a long
Yeah.
time, but they're always something like Coinbase or Uphold where you have to give them your identity. It's tied to your physical identity, and also you have to keep a balance with them. In the past, it's always been, well, you keep a fiat balance in order to use it. Or more recently, some places you have a crypto balance, but custodial, like the custodian holds it.
Yeah.
It's not your money, and then they convert it to fiat at the to a fiat valuation when you swipe the card. But this, you have your money that you entirely control up until you make the purchase and only for the amount. So if I go to a coffee shop and it's like $8, I have no fiat. And then I buy exactly $8 in fiat, which I have in a custodial way for about 5 seconds until it gets turned over to the merchant. And then there you go. So it's basically a one app live on crypto thing. And so, like, if you look at, I'm not going to show you any sensitive information here, but my account
Yeah.
here, the card is under the name Captain Duffy, who does not exist.
Okay.
So it's not tied to my identity at all. No, which is a lot of people, that part, a lot of people have a hard time believing because they're like, well, I thought that isn't that illegal, but no, it's not. The company has found a way. If this works for people in the U.S. The U.S. financial system is so strange that I don't expect people from outside to really fully understand. But you can go to a grocery store and buy a prepaid Visa card, for example. You spend like $25 and you get a $20 Visa card. and it's not in your name or anyone's name. It's like a gift card, a Visa gift card. You can go, you can spend it. It's not tied to
You
your
can basically
identity,
spend it
but you
anywhere.
can spend it. Yes, pretty much. It's more restricted than most cards. And so, for example, when you have prepaid cards like this, at a gas pump, if you go to refuel your car, you have to have, I believe, you either have to go in and prepay at a certain amount, or if you at the pump, you have to have at least $75 on there because they'll put a $75 hold on your card. And when you finish pumping, then it gives you back whatever wasn't
Okay.
spent. So there's some little quirks to it. And also only works in the US, whereas most cards work almost anywhere in the world. This right now only works in the US. But so basically, it's that sort of a thing, except instead of the grocery store selling you a $20 card at a time, the company, Ionia, is selling you $20 at a time of credit right into the app, into the same card number over and over and over. So basically, through some little clever through some clever I wouldn't I'm trying to pick the right word, but through a clever setup, they're able to make it so that anyone without a bank account, without giving up their identity or giving up control of their crypto can live pretty much on crypto right now. The only restrictions, I believe it's $1,000 per load, meaning you can't have if you want to buy something that's more expensive than that, you can't. And if it's $1,000 per day, so you can only spend 1,000 per day. But that's still $365,000 over the course of a year. I
Yeah.
don't know how much you're balling or how much you need to be spending, but it's a big help for people, is what I'm saying. And so I'm really excited about that. Last caveat, I'm sorry for doing a giant run-on sentence for this thing, but the last caveat is right now they don't have any NFC. It's a virtual card, and they don't have any NFC capability yet. They're working on it very quickly. So it's mostly good for online purchases now
Okay.
because you can copy and paste the card number and all that. It works. In person, it's a little trickier because you'd have to have the person you have to manually input the card number, and it's clunky. But I found a workaround for that because if you use something like the Walmart app or the Starbucks app, like all these different companies have apps, you can put the card number in there and just use their QR code scanner
Okay.
and just use it just like that. So it's out now. It's ready to use. Anyone can live on crypto today, and everyone should be trying, especially when you can actually have NFC in the app and just do a tap and pay with your phone in the very near future.
And I can think of worse things to think to worry about than remembering or typing a 16-digit number. Like that also doesn't sound like the end of the world.
Yeah, of course.
Um, I'm this obviously also works with stable coins, right? For people that are worried about like price fluctuations, etc.
I'm sure it does. What I would, the wallets, end user wallets are really shitty for the most part these days. There's not a lot of good ones, but what I would like to have is have a wallet that uses Thorchain in the back end,
Right.
right, to trustlessly be able to swap, and you can stop between UST, the Terra Luna stablecoin, and Dash, for example. So even if you don't want fluctuations, you can just be like, all right, I'm keeping it all in UST right now, and then you swap some over for Dash and just spend that, and then you can kind of live on fiat, like live fiat free without worrying about
Well, now
fluctuations.
now we just need a version for nation states, and our bros at Russia can can now fully run outside of the SWIFT system.
Yeah, what you really need is just one that works in Canada right now because, I mean, I'm not saying the US won't get that degree of financial censorship this year, even, but it just hasn't yet. But it has in Canada. And so they need it more than anyone.
You know what else I got thinking? Of course, like you cannot expect prices of cryptocurrencies to be rallying up because a government is censoring
Hmm.
fiat, um, particularly because, well,
Hmm.
like we have a big big conflict in some parts of the world that's like taking everything down with it. But like, have we had previously geopolitical events that have triggered the price positively? Because all I can remember is nations threatening to ban cryptocurrencies at that, taking the prices down, but I couldn't remember a single one that took the prices up.
The one I can't remember is the Cyprus incident, when Cyprus started taking haircuts off of people's bank accounts. They started stealing people's money
Right.
because of that whole financial crisis. That caused the initial explosion in price. Now, I in the future, the thing is it's all very theoretical, and people, I think, buy crypto um because speculatively still. It's like, well, maybe one day this will be some cool tech. And then when they're scared, they don't want to deal with that
Hmm.
anymore. I think that once people start actually spending and using crypto as money and they start relying on it for other things, like for example, I think that the mass adoption triggers will be in this order: NFTs and DeFi, because NFTs basically allow people and artists and creators and stuff like that to sell stuff that they otherwise wouldn't be able to
Hmm.
sell. It's a new monetization. It's not just not like, let's just say, if I'm, as much as I love spending my dash every day, like I can buy groceries with it. I can buy groceries with fiat too. Yay. Like, okay, maybe it's better. It's not as censored. Maybe there's no inflation, like not none of that stuff. But it still just does that. Thing about NFTs is they open up. It's something new. Like an artist was not selling anything instead of NFTs in the past. Some people who are print artists were, but some people, like, for example, if you have an animated show that you're fundraising by selling NFTs, like what were you doing before? That wasn't available to you. So there's a lot of people that will need NFTs for life. Now, not the crap that's out there right now, like the monkeys and stuff. Like, I mean, obviously some of those will be collector's items and will be very valuable in the future, but a lot of like just the JPEG NFTs are just garbage, probably not going to be
Yeah.
around. But when you start tying in NFTs to special things like exclusive access and things, it solves a real problem. And I think that people will start using that and relying on that. And like, just because the market crashes doesn't mean all of a sudden you don't need to still make money as a creator. Doesn't mean you're not going to still do that. And the same thing with DeFi. People want to do financial things like get loans, like earn interest, like et cetera, et cetera. They need to do that all the time. And right now it's a bunch of like sushi swap nonsense with people, you know, pledging liquidity on this and that, like all this kind of like get rich quick stuff. But the core of DeFi is something people will need all the time, and then they'll need to spend it. So I just think that people don't touch crypto enough. They don't need it. It's too much of a, well, I'll buy this because maybe I make a bunch of money. But once they start actually relying on and using this thing, and then money becomes money, and then you can actually spend it without a centralized third party, then people are going to start valuing that in a crisis. They're going to see, oh shit, the world's going bad. Inflation. Also, let's be honest, inflation wasn't that crazy until the last few years in the
No, it
U.S.
wasn't.
In other countries, yes, but it wasn't that crazy. But now it's that crazy. Now I think people are starting to get worried a little bit.
And everyone seemed to be worried about inflation up to like a month ago. But
Hmm.
you didn't really see these cryptos like really be a hedge against that, which is like it killed a bit of the narrative,
Hmm.
didn't it? Like you see gold goes
Hmm.
down and Bitcoin goes down with it, or stocks go down and Bitcoin goes down with it. And pretty much all other
Hmm.
cryptos do. Like you don't really have a hedge against proper inflation there. So don't you worry sometimes that these things are just taking down uh, some of the main strong narratives around cryptocurrency? And then I would say that it's good because it weeds out the bad projects or the bad ideas,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it really puts a strain in the whole ecosystem as it is.
Yes, it does. And I think that's a good thing because the potential of cryptocurrency is solid. The practical deliverables are mostly not worth the valuations they have today. And like Bitcoin kept on getting more useful to a certain extent. And then in 2016 or so, its utility declined and didn't really recover. And yet the price and, speculation, all this kind of stuff kept going up and up and up. And so all these narratives of like, oh yeah, we're all going to be using Bitcoin. It's like, well, you can't, because if you do, all of a sudden all the networks can get clogged up, and off-chain solutions that are actually decentralized are just not there yet.
Hmm.
They just can't just can't work. And so why should this be a hedge? It's not ready. And the same thing goes for Web3 and DeFi and stuff, where it's like, I feel like this latest round of crypto has been one of the least cypherpunk rounds of crypto, because like no one cares about tokenomics, no one cares about emissions and coin supplies and who controls what. No one cares if there's just a big VC backed corporation issuing this token. And like, okay, well, it's basically like a centralized version of like what kind of decentralized, like it doesn't do anything. It's not deserving of that money, that trust, if the government can just shut it down. So like, can the government shut down Bitcoin? I don't think so. No. I mean, already the China mining migration happened. What they can do is shut down the way most people use Bitcoin. Can the government shut down Solana? I think overnight,
Yeah, they
yes.
definitely
I
can.
really think they could just send a letter and get rid of it. It's so that's not why. Why should that be a hedge against inflation if you can just do that?
Hmm.
Like, if if the government said all crypto banks are illegal now, like Coinbase, Kraken, all those kind of like crypto bank type things, they're all illegal without like they're not, or they're not illegal, but they are banned from allowing people to withdraw to a self custody solution. Like they have to hold, like you can't take your money out of the account. You can only transfer it to a different account from like your PayPal to your Coinbase or something. If they made that a law overnight, like no one, the five people that are using crypto already, it would be zero. Like just done. It's over. Now, I mean, not permanently, but it's not at that part with like censorship resistance. It's not like you can go to your average grocery store and actually pay directly in crypto without giving up your ID or your or custody of your money in the meantime. It's just not there yet. And so it's kind of funny how like the market is the free market, of course, is undefeated, and people misunderstand it all the time. They think that they like, well, I think I know what everyone should value, and like, well, it should be an inflation hedge. Why isn't it doing this? It's like, well, I think the free market understands. We all understand in the back of our brains because we are all the market. We understand that this isn't ready to be censorship resistant money yet. Maybe the base technology is, but the way it's been implemented, it's just not ready.
And that's a cool distinction, honestly, because well, first of all, you mentioned before how little people think about tokenomics and how they don't even get mentioned, and how
Hmm.
like most of it is like people just don't care about this shit. Uh, Luna is one of the top 10 cryptos right now.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just
Yeah.
huge. And I didn't know this, but I wrote the number one article in Google for Luna tokenomics.
Hmm.
And you would think you would get
Hmm.
solid traffic from that every day, basically, because it's something that people should be
Hmm.
searching for, right? Well, forget about that.
Yeah.
It didn't even get in my radar. I just found out yesterday that that article has been number one in Google for like a month, and it barely gets any traffic
And
at
no
all.
one cares.
So like, is it what?
Yeah. So the other thing about inflation, right? People talk about inflation all the time and like, oh, Bitcoin doesn't have inflation. I mean, it does. And most of the time,
Yeah. You're right.
most,
There was someone like like one of those Bitcoin facts uh, accounts that recently tweeted something like
Mhm.
"days without inflation for Bitcoin," and it's like a huge number. And like, dude, you don't understand how this works.
Yeah, I'm looking up, seeing if I can. Um, maybe not, but I mean, Bitcoin was at for most of this time that people were saying. oh, with no inflation with Bitcoin or whatever, had higher inflation than during that period. I mean, can you believe that?
No, I don't hear you.
Hey, did you lose me? Okay, sorry. Um,
You're there now.
but as I said, yeah, as I was saying, for most of the time when people were saying that Bitcoin's an inflation hedge, Bitcoin had higher inflation than the dollar, which is crazy that people don't even recognize that. Um, now, am I coming through, by the way?
No, yeah, I hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Yeah, so most of the time that people were complaining about the US dollar inflation stuff, Bitcoin had higher inflation rate than the dollar. Of course, that's not the point. The point is supposedly 21 million Bitcoin is the limit. That's all you'll ever have. And at some point the inflation rate, like now it's well below what the dollar is, well below now especially, but it's trending lower. But more importantly, it's a fixed rate. It's like exactly what you're getting. But more importantly, if you work to support the network, you get that inflation. Like if you're a miner, you get that inflation
Hmm.
back. Or if you're in a proof of stake coin, you can stake it and get part of that inflation back. Like it's people don't really see that kind of a thing. But then, like, what percentage of the supply of like dollars out there right now does the Federal Reserve have right now? Not nearly as high a percentage as some of these founders have of their coins.
Aha.
And so
Right.
people don't really see how this works. They in the market sees how it works. The market obviously puts utility above all, but some to a certain extent these kinds of tokenomics really do matter and make sense. It's just that it won't be we won't be in this kind of good situation where it can really be a hedge until the future.
And one thing that I wanted to touch on this podcast was like,
Hmm.
like you said, people use these cryptos as instrument of speculation. Basically, that's what they're for,
Hmm.
mostly. People do not know or do not understand how these things really work, and if they do, they don't care. Um,
Hmm.
we are at that point in time, and we hope that eventually we'll get out of there. But like, can crypto still be relevant if the tensions continue to like escalate across the globe? Is this potentially a threat for the very existence of this industry?
I,
I would be very careful with the answer, but in my mind, it seems like it's very likely that this could wipe us out.
yeah, I kind of have the opposite feeling. I think that um crypto's its primary point is censorship resistant money and technology through decentralization. That's how you achieve that goal. And I think that for the longest time, people have been able to do whatever they wanted with crypto. And therefore they haven't really worked out those muscles. And I feel like pressures in the world are what make crypto stronger. And we have a very weak yet very affluent crypto world. And I think that what we're going to see is a much stronger crypto world in the future, the more pressures kind of land on us. So, like, for example, I'm just going down the list of like random things that are completely unaddressed in crypto for the most part.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, centralization is a huge problem. Like, how many projects are run by like five people that own all the tokens?
Most of them.
And it's like most of them, like almost all of them. There's just very few that aren't. Um, and the very few that aren't are like Bitcoin and a bunch of projects that people have mostly forgotten about today that are not like the top most talked about ones. Um, the next thing is how many of these have a sustainable ecosystem, and I don't even think Bitcoin does at this point because the mining system, as long as there's a block reward, as long as there's inflation, it pays off for Bitcoin security enough. But then when that goes away, you're going to need fees. The problem is Bitcoin has pushed all the fees onto a second layer network for the most part that when you make fees off of a lightning transaction, like routing lightning payments, the miners don't get that. They only get when you open and close channels and things, and people are finding new and better ways of condensing that into fewer on-chain transactions. So if you look at the total percentage of fees generated by the Bitcoin network, it's been going it sharply dropped in the last couple of
Hmm.
years, right? It was like 20% or 40% sometimes even. It just but now it's just gone, like almost none, and that's not sustainable. And I don't think the way Bitcoin's scaling, I don't think there's going to be money to pay for miners and for security. And so in the future, either Bitcoin's going to have to start increasing the block size, which, is completely contrary to everything that Bitcoin was trying to
And very
do,
controversial.
or yes, and especially now, you just can't do that, Although it could be a sink or swim. They either have to do that, or they have to add a tail emission like Monero does that has a constant amount of inflation permanently, a very small amount, but a constant amount. And that's like even worse because, oh my gosh, only ever 21 million Bitcoin. Like, you can't mess with that. Or they just have to deal with people mining who have ulterior motives, right? Who are not making money off of mining or making very little, and so that they're going to have to like charge people extra to use their services, or it's going to be like the government just runs it all, or something awful like that. And so people aren't really looking at the tokenomics and how that kind of ends up working out. And the big thing that, of course, people are not looking at is the end user experience, where I can't think of a single project where top to bottom it's just easy and fun to use. Where people are just like, it's just ready. Like, oh yeah, we can just use it. Like, nope, none of
Well,
them.
Uniswap,
You know,
you may call that, but like the fees that make it not fun. It's useful, but it's not fun. Uh, what else can you
yeah.
use that's fun?
I mean,
Basically nothing.
so there's pockets of good user experience. Like for example, I believe Odyssey is a pretty good user
Oh, this
experience,
is good.
almost towards YouTube levels. But it's the blockchain element of it is not that
That's what
good.
I
Is
was
not
going to
that
say.
prominent.
Odyssey, you don't really use the blockchain
Mhm.
element of it too much. You use the other parts of it quite a lot, and they're cool.
Yeah, yeah. Use the block. It has a blockchain skeleton for sure, and just the rest of the stuff is mostly not. But even the tokenomic parts of it, like, oh, I'm uploading a video and it takes like a few minutes, even though it's uploaded, it takes a few minutes to show up because it has to hit the blockchain. Or how do I tip someone? Okay, I can tip someone. How do I get these tokens? That's annoying. Um, Thorchain is pretty good with the swaps. I think it just works. You still have to connect your wallet first, and if you're not using like Uniswap or something, or MetaMask or whatever, it can be a little annoying. But the swaps work pretty well. um, Everything in the Dash ecosystem, in my opinion, works the best, except it's too small and isolated of an ecosystem at
Yeah.
this point where, all right, like how do I like you can live on Dash today. Okay, well, how do I get some? Well, you got to sign up for Coinbase or something else. And, a few of these big payment places are based in New York, and New York does not like Dash. So there's like this. And then they're just like these annoying little bits. Or if you buy a lot of Dash, like the liquidity is not that great. So the price is not that great. Like the price motion changes if you want to like move in. There's like, or like, oh, okay, you can buy that. In this world, this small world, everything works well. And then I'm trying to think like the Lightning stuff. A few Lightning wallets, mostly custodial ones, seem to work pretty well. But then you start to add in, well, let me send from this one, and then invoice failed. Why the invoice fail? Oh, I don't know, no route. Or it's caused this. You have to open another channel. Like, then it becomes a huge headache. And so, like, even like NFTs, like, I'm sure I have not minted any on OpenSea because I'm not a millionaire. But I mean, if you mint an Ethereum NFT, I'm sure it's annoying to do. I'm sure, and OpenSea is probably easy to do though. But then it's all centralized,
And
right? You have the
nowadays,
OpenSea
as
hack
far as
and
I
all.
know, OpenSea has this very annoying user interface where it pretty much
Hmm.
dark UXs you into bridging to Polygon, so that of course you can mint more NFTs if you bridge to
Hmm.
Polygon. But like minting tokens, I mean, bridging tokens towards Polygon is expensive as well, and it's not a user friendly process. So, like,
Mm.
I see like a lot of people really frustrated with OpenSea lately. There are other NFT
Yeah.
platforms, and those are also super annoying to use. And somehow they don't really tell people that the very basic fact that, hey, you need to have ETH in your wallet to mint a token in here.
Mhm. Yeah. People don't understand that. What I've been using so far for NFTs has been Wax. I did buy one on with Wax. I'm going to use that to mint some other stuff. And it's okay, but it still has this weird setup where you have to like authorize every little action, because it's like a blockchain movement. And then there's still network congestion because it's no fees, and the way to send it without fee or use it without fees is you have to stake some into CPU and RAM and these things. And it's like at some point, like it's easy to use, but then you start hitting the blockchain pieces of it too much, and then it becomes annoying. And I'm pretty sure I don't think there's a single thing um I could say that doesn't have that experience. Like I'm glad there's pockets of good user experience in the crypto world,
Mhm.
but you can't just be like, all right, use crypto. Like, oof, not yet, not yet at all.
No, and well, since we were speaking about Dash, there was a big piece
Hmm.
of news this week. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, well, why don't you run
Very
people
quiet,
through
big
it,
piece
huh?
of news. Very quiet, big piece of
Yeah,
news.
it didn't seem
Like,
like it got blown up to the point where it could have. And I think that was by design. I think the community didn't want to make a big deal out of it, and well, yeah, Taylor himself didn't want to make a big deal
yeah,
out of it, but like I reckon that it is at some point. Like you do have these strong individuals that have been the voice of a project for so long, and suddenly they step out.
yes. And I gotta use this opportunity to say a lot of very positive things about Dash, as well as say some things that I think this situation proves that we're not working correctly. And, because Dash being the first DAO, obviously not, there's further iterations and there's things that I think, especially when we talk about tokenomics and stuff, which I think Dash has some of the better tokenomics. It still has some problems with it that I'd like to kind of mention. So basically, um, the main development group that works on the core protocol of Dash is called Dash Core Group, or the Dash Core team before it was a company or whatever. And so they take about half of the money that comes in every month, depending on how well the price is doing, right? There's a whole bunch of other entities under Dash. Like I help run something called the Dash Marketing Hub with a couple other people that's no way affiliated. The Dash Incubator is a big development group that's not affiliated with the core team. And there's a few others, like the Dash Investment Foundation is one that allows them to like invest in companies like Valkyrie, for example. And still, the Dash Network owns all that, and that's a separate organization. But so the core team, obviously founded by Evan Duffield, the founder.
Hmm.
At some point, he left to do other things, and Ryan Taylor was the head of finance, and he ended up moving into like a CEO role, kind of heading up the core team after that. And so it's I mean, there's tons of complicated little bits here and there, but the basic thing is, from my estimation, is people did not see a lot of people were dissatisfied with the performance of the core team in a lot of ways. And right now, the development part of it is headed up by Sam Westerich, aka Quantum Explorer, who people are very happy with his drive, his dedication, like all the stuff that he's managed to get done, and the upcoming Dash platform looking like it's going to be really cool, and mostly through his work. But before he became the CTO, as it were, there's just a lot of dissatisfaction over development delays, over lack of effective marketing, over the lack of a public presence of the figurehead or whatever.
Hmm.
There was all this brewing in the background, and what happened at one point was there was some disagreement over one of the PR entities that's not directly affiliated with Dash Core Group had a problem that they voiced publicly. Basically, there's a disagreement between the two parties, and that was a catalyst for a review on the performance of Dash Core Group. And it was a outside of a few forums, it wasn't really super like
It wasn't a
widespread.
big deal
And so like every
in the
every month,
major crypto scene,
yeah.
you would say.
Yeah, or even the major Dash scene, like most Dash people had no idea this was going on even. And but every month, every DAO contractor has to be approved for funding.
Okay.
And like every month, so like every month you put in a proposal, say I'm going to do this for Dash, I want money, and then the stakeholders, the masternodes vote yes or no. And if a net 10% of voters say so, you get the money. And every month you can put in a multi-month proposal, but it's still like they could change their votes at any time, and after the voting deadline, that's just what happens. So what happened was the uh, enough of the stakeholders were upset that they voted no on the core compensation proposal, basically everyone's salary proposal, and they indicated that dissatisfaction with the direction. Enough people indicated that it was like 6 hours before the voting deadline. It looked like the core team was going to lose their money, was going to be defunded and kicked out. And so Ryan Taylor, the CEO of the core team, ended up saying, you know what, I think I know what this is about. I want my people to be paid. I think I'm just going to resign. And so he agreed, he decided to step down. And then within hours, the Masternode vote totals reversed and the core team passed by like a significant margin after that. But it was looking like it was not going to pass at that
And so it
time.
was
They
basically
didn't have the
a
votes.
whale's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I have there according to the metrics. So here's the thing: if you have 1,000 Dash, you can run a master node.
Hmm.
Some people have more than 1,000 Dash, and they run multiple master nodes. All that counts is 1,000 Dash, one vote, kind of thing. Now, some people, you, if someone's a whale, I don't know how you determine that. Like, it's hard to tell because it's a pseudonymous system, right? It's like, so the only way you could figure that out is through some kind of cluster analysis of voting patterns and things like that. And then you can probably get a good grip. Like, and I just so happen to know someone who runs MNO Watch or Masternode Owner Watch.org that analyzes this stuff. And he's not 100% correct all the time, but the it seems to be very spot on. So it seems like um while like it seems like it was about like 55-45 or no, or like 54-46 as far as 54% voting for the core proposal, 46% voting against at the end or back before Ryan Taylor stepped down. And so it was a very close, but it was below the 10% threshold necessary to vote it. And so, but when you broke down the individuals as far as you could tell, when you broke down the individuals, it seemed like it was like 30% yes, 60% no. So it was more like a people's revolution, even though it was marginally fewer, like less money behind it, like fewer total votes. As far as the individuals were concerned,
Okay.
it was probably the majority. And there's a service called CrowdNode, which I think is a fantastic service, which basically lets anyone with as little as 1 Dash contribute and get staking rewards, become part of a masternode. And it's not KYC, but it is custodial. So, obviously not your keys, not your crypto,
Hmm.
whatever. But they allow you people who with as little as 1 Dash to then vote on proposals. And so they have about 30 masternodes right now. And so their voting breakdown ended up being like something like 70% like were no. So their 30 masternodes probably represented a few hundred people as opposed to like 30 individuals because it's all pooled. But that metric also kind of confirms what the other data says is on the percentage wise on the number of human beings voting, it seems like almost all of them voted or a big majority voted against the core team, whereas a few big whales really were in favor of the status quo. So the core team's still funded. The development is still going on, the infrastructure is still going on. All the other ones that weren't part of the core team keep on working. Nothing really changed except the CEO decided he's going to step down, and then they have to figure out what they want to do next. Like who's going to lead that specific part of the project next. And so it's kind of like it's very different from other governance battles we've seen in the space, right? I mean, obviously, like the Bitcoin scaling wars, like anyone who touched Bitcoin heard about
Yeah.
this. And there was, people were making hats and stuff, UASF, like there was just all this stuff, hash wars, mining, like all this stuff. And then it split, and it split and then it split again and then it split again with all these other highly public battles. In this case, nothing really. This was one could call this a revolution, I guess, but it was like you couldn't see it unless you were there for it. Like if you weren't watching the vote totals and in real time, if you just said, "All right, who got funded and what are the vote totals?" Like, all right, yeah, looks like higher participation than most elections, but it seems fine. Everyone got funded. I thought would. Hey, well, Ryan Taylor's stepping down. Oh, maybe just wants to spend more time with his kids. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like you would not even know this happened, but it. And I think that is a very good sign for decentralized governance that the Dash decentralized autonomous organization not only survived the departure of its founder, but now the guy after that, who the bigger figurehead, is not going to be the figurehead anymore. And it worked without drama, really, without destruction, without anything like that. And I think it shows that the governance system works. People didn't really have a test for it because there wasn't a big issue like this before. But now there was an issue, and in a matter of days, it just gets resolved.
I think that also shows like things work a lot better at a protocol level. Well, no, when they're at an
Mm-hmm.
organization level than in a protocol level.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you couldn't do something like this in Ethereum because it would have. Well, they don't have a DAO, so like you either
Mm-hmm.
vote with your mining or with your validators, or you do
Mm-hmm.
not vote. And in this case, there is a bigger chance of like expressing opinions and having back and forth conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of things that could be improved. For example, um, here's the things that the biggest thing is it took me a while to figure this out, but I do believe that the mentality most voters have in Dash is like a government mentality. It's like election government. Oh, the treasury is like free money, this kind of, and because of that, and that's because, and this is where we get a little bit more technical, but 10% of the coin supply is available to be spent in the treasury, to be available to be spent on protocol and stuff. If it gets spent, it gets spent. And every month there's something called the super block, whereas you see Dash's coin emission is whoop, like a heartbeat almost. It just goes boink, has these spikes every month because 10% gets created all in one block. And so if I get paid, for example, I get paid from the sky. Like it just appears like in the super block. Now, any money that's not created, that is not earmarked to be spent, just does not get created. And
Okay.
so what that means is Dash's eventual supply is not known specifically. It's no more than, it's less than 19 million at this point. But it's not like we can't give you the precise number because depending on how the treasury cycles, how many coins are created, who knows? It could be there's some slight variance in there. But as anyone who knows the basics of economics and supply and demand and scarcity knows, that if there's fewer coins created, that makes your coins more scarce, therefore more valuable. And so if you spend the entire treasury, there's more coins created, and you pay for the treasury. Even though it's free money, it's not free
Hmm.
money because you pay in inflation. But the problem is most people don't have a good grasp on economics and they don't see that. And that's a failing of the protocol, I think, not an individual education. So oddly enough, like Ryan Taylor is one of the people that proposed this a couple of years ago, and it didn't pass for a variety of reasons. And this could be a 5 hour long Dash governance talk if I went into it. But to basically make 10% of the treasury always be created, no matter what, but the stuff that's not spent on proposals would just be sent to masternodes and miners. So if you saved money by not spending it, you'd actually see the money come into your wallet. You'd actually see it. And I think that that's a very small but powerful adjustment that would let people be more sensitive to what they're spending their money on. And so I think that these issues that got brought up should have been addressed years before. That just is in the Dow finally did the right, it finally worked. It finally made its decision, but it would have made them this decision years earlier, or made a small, or maybe Ryan Taylor would still be there today, but he'd be doing a vastly different job because the market signals would have happened quicker.
So, what do you think?
And I think that that's,
What do you
yeah.
think? Sorry to interrupt, but like, what do you think the organization loses, and what do you think it wins without Ryan Taylor?
Uh, it's really hard to say. Um, I I this is just, and I don't really know fully what my opinion on this
Hmm.
is. I still have to think about it. I know there's some really good things that Ryan brought to the table. One of the things is he was the driving force behind the Dash Investment Foundation, which is a revolutionary legal structure that allows a basically a hedge fund to go invest in things, but the property is legally owned by the Dash decentralized network. So, for example, Dash, it was a seed round investor in Valkyrie, which got the first Bitcoin ETF, and it's like, well, now so the Bitcoin ETF does well. Now every Dash holder profits from that. Like, that's kind of crazy, and they can own equity in companies like the Dash network can, and it's an innovation that I have not seen happen before, and Ryan is largely responsible for that, or at least he was the brain. He did the brainstorming behind that, which I think is really cool. Um, I don't know if he had these things on the horizon, new innovations, but he also introduced Ionia to the network, and Ionia is the company behind this Dash Direct app, which turns out to be the greatest thing ever for Dash.
Okay.
And so those are the two biggest contributions I think that he had to the space. I think that what people did not necessarily approve of, and again, I'm not, these are not my opinions, these are just what I feel people thought, um, is that he brought a more of a old school corporate vibe to what is a like a sexy development heavy tech space, cypherpunk space. He kind of like, made it look like old school stuff, and that wasn't a good thing.
So yeah, and I would agree
And
to that
that,
because if you look at Dash, and
mhm,
I think even the colors of it and the way it feels, it
yeah,
just feels like PayPal on wheels.
yeah,
But like it doesn't really feel like a Web3 thing, and I think that's been one of the things weighing now down on it because yeah, you just don't get
yeah,
like the crypto crowd to fully identify with it. I'm just gonna pick up my headphone box here. One sec.
yes.
I hear you still.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly a point of contention. Uh, Another point of contention is probably um, the public appearance. Like, people, this is the new world where Elon Musk is the perfect CEO,
Nah, yeah.
right? I mean, I hate. I mean, there's a lot of nuance that goes into that comment, of course. I have no visibility on the inner workings of Tesla, and maybe he's doing a terrible job in some ways, but big, bold, a public rock star figure. The tech CEO is the pinnacle of the rock star figure in our age. In crypto, even more so. Everyone wants the next Elon Musk. Everyone wants the next Vitalik Buterin, Charles Hoskinson, Dan Larimer, I guess. Like those, everyone has these like, you know, or like Jack Mahler. It's, oh my gosh, like these big bold
Jesus
people
figure.
who are like the head. Yeah, and Ryan was never that
No.
person, and he did not seek to be that way. He was not on Twitter very much. Just like, it's just, and a lot of people would contend that that resulted in a decline in visibility for the project. Um, and just like the being just basically all, yeah, that's basically it. Like, and of course, there's just performance metrics where they're like, well, these business partnerships that we spend all this money on, these marketing initiatives, did they have a good return on investment? And maybe not. I don't know. So I think that whole referendum is kind of is what it is. Um, I do think that it's funny because so far I believe Dash's legacy has been not making up these huge mistakes that a lot of other projects have done. It's been a very safe project, if you want to call it that way, right? Like no 51% attacks, like no big governance issues, no drama here, no, like everything's safe and stable and works and stuff. But then the drawback to that has been um, a lot of these innovations have been more quiet and not like out there. And Dash could have potentially been more on like the forefront of NFTs and DeFi and all the cool, sexy
DeFi in
things. And like,
particular, I would say, because if
yes,
you look
it's
at it
funny because
from a purely
Dash was like the original DeFi coin almost because of like the masternode staking type stuff. But then it just wasn't accessible to the people. And then it kind of like fell behind in some ways. And there are some interesting NFT projects coming up on Dash platform whenever that gets released. Hopefully in the next couple months, we'll see. But uh, but then it's kind of like everyone like Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash, like those kind of things were doing their own versions of NFTs and tokens. Whereas Dash was saying like, no, those are crappy tokens. We're going to wait until we have a better way of doing it. And in being that safe, maybe you lose out on opportunity.
yeah, and you lose the chance to be like on the well, where people are talking about things. Well, and that's not necessarily a bad
Hmm.
thing. But if you look at Dash from like many fronts, it does seems like it stagnated, like it just
Hmm.
went to a flat, boring place where nothing happens. And there are cool things that happen, like you wouldn't most people wouldn't even know it's governed by a DAO from before the time DAOs were cool,
Hmm.
and most people don't know about like all the
Yeah.
stuff that you've been talking about.
Yeah, and that's been the biggest communication and taking the product to market. I think has been the biggest failing, uh, and a lesser like a mixed bag on that would be the technical side because I think Dash is ahead of the curve in a lot of technical innovations and it's kind of behind the curve on some other ones. So it's kind of a 50-50. And if I'm being honest, um, safety and stability and products and that work, it's been ahead of the curve. So it's kind of you got those three things, right? You got high high safety stability, does as advertised points. Innovation used to be one of the most innovative projects. Now it's like innovating on some, behind the times on some. And then as far as like marketing hype and actually getting people to use it, it's probably on the lower side. So that's kind of the balance I see right now, if I'm being honest.
And in market demand, as we said, like it's pretty low because people are doing just okay with their fiat.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like um, I would say the other cryptocurrency projects have been much more sensitive to short-term market demands, and Dash has been sensitive to long-term market demands. But long-term market demands don't pay the bills until then, So like, oh, Bitcoin, like Bitcoin's biggest achievement is being the thing that you buy and number goes up. You just like
Hmm.
anyone can buy some, figure out how to move it to their Trezor, and then the number goes up, and there you go. And there's many more important things to solve than that problem. But just the fact that they solved that is like, okay, that's good. And then Ethereum, first off, like the DeFi stuff, which was just a way to make even more money. But then more importantly, just like there's all these financial things people want to do that the financial system has let them down on. And then you get DeFi. And then
Well, and
NFTs,
raising funds
huge
in
growth
front of that,
bubble.
like
But
the whole
yeah.
ICO thing, well,
Oh,
like
yeah, the
the
ICOs.
number one application.
Yeah. It's so actual censorship resistant money that works as a great payment system is something that is this is finally the year when we start to care, right? This is finally the year where Canada starts to shit the bed and do all the kinds of crazy things. And so it's one of those times where, I guess we'll see, the payments thing, it could really take off, especially if people are using crypto to make all their money, like make NFTs. to use DeFi. Like, what do they do with all that money? How, and if they can't get it to their bank account or to spend, why don't you just use Thorchain, swap it for Dash? You know, again, Dash is hopefully going to be on Thorchain soon, like a few couple weeks, few months, I don't know. And then now you have that's like Dash is how you spend your crypto, and that could work in pretty well. But I mean, it's not ending there. There's a lot of dApps that are being built for the Dash platform, including like a decentralized Twitter that I'm kind of helping out on with the like the brand identity and all that kind of stuff of. And there's a few. The big thing is when we talk about Web three,
Hmm.
and I don't know if you saw Moxie Marlon Spike's critique of Web three, but his critique of Web three was that you still have to go through a full node to access Web three, and some company out there runs the node, and you have to therefore trust that one company. And so it's kind of like not like that. Whereas with Dash, they figured out a way to cut out the middleman via the decentralized API and just interact straight from the blockchain from a mobile device, for example, without having to go through a full node.
Hmm.
And that is huge as far as an innovation standpoint. Now the question is, who's going to care? Like, is anyone going to care? I mean, it depends on what Web3 stuff starts getting shut down. You know, it depends on if the Web3 portals start charging a lot of money for their users. Like, MetaMask starts taking a fee on top of things and all that kind of stuff. Like, it depends on what happens there, you know, or it could just be, I don't know. This could also just be a thing where you got to hype the crap out of it. Just say Dash is Web 4 or Web 4 and like make a lot of noise and get people on board in the meantime. But yeah, still a lot of work to be done. But then again, that's basically the entirety of the crypto space, right? Still, the two biggest
True,
crypto
true.
projects have not figured out how to scale properly. So we're still far from, you know, the crypto world being everything now.
You have also like a lot of projects that are going in a direction that's pure hype and no meat. Like
Hmm.
you could say that about Cardano, right? Like they hype their way out of to being a top three cryptocurrency, based in
Hmm.
no more merit than other chains have. uh, and on
Hmm.
product terms, you would say like, okay, they have a great team, they have great ideas, they have all this. Well, like in product terms, what they have delivered to get to where they are is not more innovative than what you've seen in other places. Like even to use a favorite example of yours, Thorchain. Uh,
Hmm.
you would say that
Yes.
Thorchain has managed to deliver way better products than the Cardano ever has, and be nowhere near that. And you can say that about other competitors that are in the top of the space. And I would say like that shows where we stand right now. So going back to Dash,
Hmm.
I think that shows that Dash is sort of like playing a 50 years game, whereas other people are playing a 1 year game, a 20-year game, a 10-year game. And yeah, we'll see where we land on that. But that's at least my
Yeah.
reading of it.
That's true, and the same is also applicable to Thorchain. Although Thorchain is much more sizzle, they have much more hype around them and stuff. But still, it seems like I think that like Thorchain is the entire reason I understand DeFi, because I didn't really get why people cared about DeFi before that. Because it's like all wrapped tokens that then you pledge on this kind of stuff. With Thorchain, I'm like, oh, you mean I can swap this real asset, not a shitty Ethereum token, but this
Hmm.
real asset for this real asset, no middleman. Oh, you mean I can provide liquidity and make interest on my real asset here? Oh, you mean and then all that stuff is it's what makes DeFi important. And so I think that Thorchain is massively undervalued as well. And I'm not just saying like, oh, I think Thorchain's great, of course. But I think it's also very undervalued because, you know, the price hasn't been doing well very, very recently. And despite, you know, the same goes for all kinds of different projects. There's a lot of there's like I would call it like the page 1 and 2 bear like border of the coin market cap. Like the bottom few of page 1 and then like page
Yeah.
2 is like where all the real innovations happening in crypto. Because you also look at like Zcash. Zcash kind of depending on who you want to talk about, kind of never went
No.
anywhere. Like no one used it. Still no one uses it really. And it's just another like boring like, oh, like Barry Silbert's shilling it because he's got big heavy Zcash bags and stuff. But like it's almost another one of those like, it's dead, no one cares about it, yet has delivered the actual, you know, actual real and usable privacy where you can actually have a mobile wallet and send fully encrypted transactions easily and to where it's actually workable to like pay for regular things. And in an era where now they track the Bitfinex hacker, they track the DAO hacker. A lot of these people mix their funds using CoinJoin and stuff like that. Like there's and now they're tracing people's transactions to see if they donated to these politically inexpedient causes. And the value proposition for something like Zcash has never been stronger. And they have a very strong working product, yet like, whatever. I don't know. Let's just, what's the next pump coin? Shiba, like it's we're not quite there yet where I honestly think, as you mentioned with like the Russia stuff, to maybe bring it full circle, right? I don't think that um, we're at a stage yet where the real crypto innovations are being properly valued because all the speculative ones are ahead of it. But once you put some pressure on this, and then all of a sudden people are like start dumping their speculative coins, but then they get scared and like no one's going to be like, well, I'm just going to use Strike and use Jack Muller's fucking, centralized custodial solution. Like if they're afraid of being shut down and they're like, I gave them my ID and phone number and stuff too. And like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to use that. Like when people start getting scared, they're going to say, all right, they're going to start talking to the smartest people they know in crypto and say, what's the most secret, best encrypted thing I can use? And then people are going to say, well, probably Zcash right now. And or people are going to say, how can I use crypto today without a bank account? They're like, well, you need Dash for that. Okay. Or how can I go from my Zcash to my Dash? Well, we kind of need Thorchain right now. And it's going to be those things, or like, how do I post stuff on the internet without it getting shut down, without the next Rumble, the next BitChute, the next whatever shutting it down? Well, you kind of need a library for that. And it's just going to be the pressure, I think, is going to destroy most of the crypto value that we see at the top. But that end of first page of CoinMarketCap, beginning of second page kind of territory is going to probably shine. Of course, library is much more than that, much further down than that. But you get what I'm talking about.
Let me just before we close, because I really have to run after this. But I wanted to check out
Uh-huh.
what known projects are on page number 2 of CoinMarketCap as like a fun last thing to do. Um,
I didn't actually, I didn't actually do my research before this, but sure.
Okay, let me see what I know of
Uh-huh.
there. Because actually, page 1 is long, man. It's 100. So, like, there's a lot of things. Well, you mentioned Wax before. Wax is in there. 1inch is in there. Bancor is in
Mhm.
there. What else do I know here? Gate.
Mhm.
Gate. Kava. Yeah, but I would say there's some interesting things that haven't really had their chance to shine in there, that I know of. Probably other good ones.
Mhm.
But man, yeah, thank you very much for coming here. And well, we did go full circle on the
Mhm.
Russia thing, so yeah, we'll see how that develops. I'm planning on posting this episode tomorrow, so this is gonna be pretty recent. And yet, I feel like by the time it's
Mhm.
published, a lot of the things we said here on Russia are gonna be outdated. But we'll see how that looks like.
That's the way it
That's
goes.
the way it goes. Well, thank you very much,
Yeah.
and
Well,
thank you to everyone
thanks for having
listening.
me on.
Basically, finally, want to shield your stuff? Want to point people towards following you?
Yes. Yes. So look up Digital Cash Network on YouTube, Odyssey, Twitter, everywhere else, and that's where you have my stuff. And absolutely, if you're in the US, go download Dash Direct. Dash Direct, one word, and actually try spending some crypto. And it's pretty freaking crazy how easy it is. So yeah, go do that.
And if you really want to live the Joel Valenzuela experience, go live in New Hampshire.
Yeah, or anywhere in the US now, thanks to this one app. But yeah.
Yeah. I was just trying to make a joke about how passionate you're about New Hampshire. But well, that's it, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.